welcome today. Thank you all very much for coming along. Today we are really lucky to have Michael Hohl, who's going to be giving us a bit of a presentation on systems thinking and design. But before that, I just wanted to say that these are the futures of design education discussion talks. They are kind of hosted by the DRS EdSig, so that's the Design Research Society Education Special Interest Group. Basically, it's just the bunch of folk that are really interested in design education.
No, he's just going.
Sorry about that. Trying to do two things at once here. My apologies. So we regularly host these discussion series as a way to try to pluralize as much as we possibly can design education, to try to insert different ideas and bring different perspectives on design education. We're working just now on the 2026 series. We're hoping to have colleagues from different parts of the world once again in 2026. So as always, we'll put those events on Eventbrite. I'll put a link to the Eventbrite sort of profile that we have as well. I'll put a whole bunch of links in the text chat once Michael starts speaking. But anyway, today is all about Michael. It's great to see you in the presenting seat, Michael. Usually you're here asking some really interesting questions, as I said earlier. So today, I'm hoping that you're going to be giving us lots of interesting answers. So I think I'll just maybe hand over to you directly, if that's okay, Michael, and you can introduce yourself and go for it.
Yeah. So first, thanks for having me. I'm Michael Hohl. I'm based in Dessau, and today I'll be presenting. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yep, that looks good. We can see the PDF application, and so that's it full screen. Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So I can't see you anymore. So I'll be presenting today the systems thinking. I'll be presenting probably another time. Today I'm giving an insight into what we've been doing here in the last couple of years in teaching in Dessau, which is about an hour's drive outside of Berlin. And what I'm presenting is not my own thing, but it's actually done together with my students, especially Mathilde Scholz, which is mentioned below. And it's about teaching first year design theory for first year BA design students here in Dessau. This is part of several, so my presentation today is part of several publications we did earlier with our interest in curriculum design and different teaching strategies, teaching and learning strategies. I'm coming from cybernetics. Before I taught BA students, I was mostly teaching doctoral students and master students and still giving lectures. I did my PhD at Sheffield Hallam and worked at the University of Huddersfield and University of Hertfordshire. And then in 2010, I started working as a senior research lecturer, I suppose, in the postgraduate research at the Royal College of Art in innovation design engineering, and brought my ideas and thoughts from cybernetics into teaching doctoral students. And then a few years ago, I moved to Germany and worked at Weimar. I was still giving lectures then, and I realized the only person that learns something when I'm giving lectures is me, but no one else. So I need to fundamentally change this. And what I learned from the doctoral students was, well, I'm taking them as mature actors that are interested in something. I'm taking them serious as long as they don't prove the opposite. And so I decided to try some educational experiments. And a little bit I was guided also by a wonderful quote by Heinz von Förster, a cybernetician from 1974. And he said, we should create open educational institutions in which teachers do not know what results will be achieved at their seminars, and in which the autonomy of the students is taken serious. Imagine that there is a world with second-order schools in which you learn to learn, design designing, plan planning, or invent inventing. So, and another big guidance and mentor was the cybernetician Ranulph Glanville. He was a research professor at the Royal College of Art, and we conducted lots of postgraduate research workshops about reflective practice and so on, sometimes starting on Monday and finishing on Friday with a presentation. We did our workshops in IDE, Innovation Design Engineering, at St. Luca School of Architecture in Ghent and in Brussels, and he also conducted those at RMIT. And it's all about teaching designers to do research and to reflective practice. The key words here are creative, so from cybernetics, creativity, circularity, conversation, double descriptions at teachback, research, iterations, feedback, reflection, and double loop learning. And it's all about creating conditions for structure to emerge. And with PhD students and professors for cybernetics, this always worked really fine. So this is a short overview of our timeline. So this is a process, an experiment, a prototype. It started with PhD supervision, and fundamentals are Schoen and Dewey and Ranulph Glanville. We started in 2010 with these reflection seminars. Sometime Mathilde joined my lectures or my seminars here as a first-year design student. And big inspiration were, I guess, for many of us, for you as well, Neil Postman, Paulo Freire, Ivan Illich, David Orr, Carl Rogers, and Schoen, of course. So what I learned from my own PhD research is that learning is situated and embodied. The space, how I feel, and the people that surround me in my learning process play a crucial role there. Who are we? So that's Mathilde, Michael Hohl, and I'm presenting now our experimental first semester design theory seminar. We begin with nothing, just curiosity, a structured agenda, and 1.5 hours a week. From this structure emerges, under our guidance, what the students make from it. And the keywords are double loop learning, feedback, reflection, self-governing system, social design, agile, teaching and learning. So all of this is our learning outcomes also are very much linked to the UNESCO Sustainable Development Learning Objectives. I'm not going into those. This is, for example, what our agenda looks like. So fundamentally, I'm only the expert for design theory. We give the students tasks, and these tasks we develop together in a discussion. What are we going to do today? Homework was reading a design theory text, for example. And we have this agenda, and then we distribute roles. We always have 2 students as facilitators. With these students, we develop the agenda. What are we going to do next week? Then we have 2 people giving us feedback at the end of the lecture. What worked, what didn't work, and do they have any suggestions how to do it better? Then we have a timekeeper. We have someone writing notes, minutes, and then we have someone taking photographs, or 2 people taking photographs. And the photographs I'll be presenting are actually mostly from the students. So here we have our structured agenda on the left side, and on the right side we have who is facilitator today, who is giving feedback, who is taking photographs, who is a timekeeper. So learning as a system, here the students are in our workroom and they are collaborating in small groups and discussing something or collecting some material. Then we always have a chair circle. The chair circle is a fundamental thing. When the students come into the room and the chairs are organized in rows, they immediately start organizing a chair circle intuitively, because they're used to that. And it's about avoiding a front where people participate and a back row where people are doing something else. So everyone is engaged, everyone has an eye contact with one another, and everyone is on the same level. Then students are keeping a reflective journal. This is from one particular day. And at the end of every seminar, we take 5 minutes to reflect in our journals. What did we do today? What was my role in it? How could I have done it better? What else could I have done? So next one. So instead of a hierarchy where the professor or a teaching assistant is telling people what to do, we have a kind of distributed network of shared influence where everyone has a voice and can make suggestions, and if these suggestions are useful, we just try it out. So it's about creating a safe space to make errors, reflect, learn, and grow. So getting feedback from older students. This is a kind of method that I didn't think was very important. Getting feedback from older students, it's about one's ideas or a problem that they identified in their neighborhood, in their shared accommodation or on the campus, and that they try to design a solution for during this semester. And of course, the prototypes they are creating are not graded. So their writing and academic work is being graded. So they lose the fear of making errors in their designing and continue making prototypes because they know it won't be graded. And here, this is a method by Lucius Burckhardt called the Strolology method. It's also been translated into English. And the Strolology method for Burckhardt, he's an architect, and they're walking through urban spaces and discussing architecture. We are walking through the park, and every 7 minutes we switch pairs, and the younger students in their first semester are explaining the problem they identified in their kitchen, for example, to older students and get some advice and input and methods from them. And also, this is part of the wider framework where it's beyond learning outcomes and objectives. We think it's important that they learn social skills, learning to give and receive constructive feedback, working well together in groups, communicating with clarity, honesty, and friendliness, appreciating diverse points of view, being able to take responsibility for one's contributions to the group and one's own learning process, being reliable in teamwork, being able to take on roles such as to initiate or lead. Here is an exercise that we do that we call the observation exercise. In this observation exercise, they bring a small object from home, preferably one that fits into the pocket, and the other person has to draw from their description, how they are describing this object. And in this supposedly observation exercise, they realize that we don't really have the vocabulary to describe yet our designs and the attributes of material objects. And so they realize how limited our verbal descriptions are, and that we actually have to practice to observe and to pour this into clear utterances. And often when I walk from pair to pair, watching them drawing, the person that is drawing can't identify the object, and I'm just looking over the drawer's shoulder, and I can immediately identify it because they have preconceptions. This is just a really amazing exercise. So this is usually introvert and shy students, which we are having since COVID more and more of, are quite shy in speaking in front of the large group. Large group meaning between 25 and 30 members. And we have a group in the morning and a group in the afternoon. And often it takes 2 years, 4 semesters, or even 5 semesters until shy students are confident enough to speak in front of the large group. They don't have a problem speaking in small groups of 3, 4, 5 people. And here, this example, 2 really shy students volunteered to facilitate a session after 6 weeks in their first semester. And for me, this was an amazing moment because I knew that the method worked, that we had been successful in creating a safe space for them to feel comfortable. They're still having a chair, 2 tables in front of them and hiding behind the tables. But you can see in their body language that actually they're quite confident because they trust the structure of our format. So then what happened then? Then they did a final exhibition, and the students themselves organized and contacted. We don't really have the space we learn in is not our space. It's a multifunctional room. So we could only use parts of the space for our final year, end of year presentation, exhibition. And so the students themselves contacted the Bauhaus, which is on our campus down the road, and asked them if we could have a room for 1 day for our end of semester presentation. And they organized this all by themselves. This is usually, this would slide now to the other side, but this is a PDF, so it doesn't. So this is on the top floor of the Bauhaus, and I had nothing to do with this exhibition. The students themselves identified all the themes that they wish to present. For example, here we have a wall they designed full of the methods they identified themselves. So it's discussions and conversation are a method. Going for a walk is a method. Reflecting is a method. Giving feedback and receiving feedback are methods. Doing interviews, doing, doing a questionnaire, mind mapping and observing, all of those are methods that the students identified by themselves. This is a view into the space back there. So they are exhibiting their first semester BA prototypes and the templates we've been creating together. We'll see this in a moment. And then behind there is a chair circle where they invited the visitors, their parents and whoever was visiting, into a chair circle to discuss the curriculum and this way of learning and design and the theory they presented. And back there we can see a wall for feedback. So they identified feedback as an important method to improve and change and get an insight into other people's perspective. And so they invited visitors to leave notes and give feedback to the exhibition and post them back there. Then, this is a thing from me from another presentation where I thought there's a kind of an iceberg model of design education. Elizabeth Sanders also alludes to that in 2009 in a paper. So we teach tools and techniques and methods and methodologies. We teach knowing, identifying problems, skills, habits and rituals, software applications, collaboration. We teach what we learn and the actions. And how we learn and the values are often not really made explicit. So all the unconscious feelings and the space we're in, taken for granted belief. So what are the values students learn as designers? Are these really made explicit all the time? And especially how we learn and how in our setup, which values are embedded into the way we are teaching and learning in our learner-centered approach. Here's some feedback from the students. Students are saying, The most important thing I learned this semester is that one cannot separate theory from practice. They are like two sides of the same coin. And they answered what they learned. This is discussion groups being thrown into the cold water. The course is very open, opportunity to discuss things. It's learning by doing. So learning close, direct, and constructive design. Everything is taking place at an eye level. Everyone was equal. Everyone participated and tried. It's an open, easy atmosphere. Relaxed learning is taking place. Then they tried out a 5-minute meditation initiated by students, which worked quite well for this cohort. Then we had the walking method. There are constant surprises and we are self-organized. Open handling of the course, and that you can talk about everything. There's an openness and we are shaping it ourselves. This has a large impact also outside of the campus. So there's a work group curriculum. The students are cooking together, which you can see here below on the right-hand side. Then there's food sharing going on. Then they have an off-campus silkscreen printing workshop. Then there's closed sharing, which you see up here. And this also is moving into the collaborative studios of the campus. So it has the way they learn, facilitating, working in small groups, taking on responsibility for their own learning, and for example, taking photographs and writing minutes, gave them the toolbox to lead, but in a friendly way, and also to work well in groups together. So, for example, we have a student room where they are using all the stuff they are learning in our seminar, like taking pictures, writing minutes, and so on. And the group runs this student room this way. Then we've got this work group curriculum where teachers and students together meet once a week, or we used to have this, and discuss the curriculum together. Here we are in the middle of it, working on hours and people and sizes of groups. And here as well. And here as well in Corona. So, what makes this teaching design theory from a cybernetics perspectives? So the what we are teaching, the teaching content, so the models, the methods, the theory, the practice, the frameworks we're learning, the tools and techniques. Then how we are learning is a second order SOC, second order cybernetic form. So it's about doing and acting, the roles we are doing. So we're not just sitting there discussing theory, we're actually theorizing practice and practicing theory. I could elaborate on this for ages. Then it's all taking place on an eye level. It's about feedback and circularity, using this feedback to inform next week's session. It's open and flexible. It's about having a safe space, taking on responsibility for the others and for your own learning process. It's about being generous and respectful, playful learning and fun. It's evolutionary. It's about making errors, but learning from those errors through reflection. So there are no errors. Everything is a prototype. And we just try again next week. Everything is a prototype. Everything is a process. Whatever it is, even our seminar. And the why, our goals, it's about understanding design theory. It's about understanding human-centered design and its limitations. It's about being empowered and being motivated. It's a participatory learning culture that they are inhaling and living. It's about distributed responsibility, designing the course together. Look at local problems, small problems and large problems, like the Mensa, for example, the cafeteria, as a design challenge, establish feedback and reflection as methods in every process. It's also about placemaking, so making a home here in Dessau, because you went to probably to school somewhere else and left home and moved here. And it's about initiating and perceived change in real life, outside academia, about transferring what we learn here outside to the real world. Because usually students learn the room and they leave the knowledge in the room. It's about becoming a skilled communicator and coordinator. Then, conclusions. So it's not just what we learn and how we learn, the attitude and mindset, but also the organization and structure play a crucial role. Learning a culture and mindset, thinking cybernetically. Now, and this is for us educators, now that we know how to do it right, we have to keep on adapting and continuously changing this in order to avoid emerging in a kind of comfort zone and just applying a recipe. So the what are the teaching content, the models and the methods, the how, the cybernetic form, being on an eye level, having feedback and critique, being open and flexible, create a safe space, taking on responsibility, being generous and helpful, and so on. And the empowerment, the goals and structure. Okay, so it's the when, so the what, the how, the why, and the when. The structure is totally important. And I wasn't aware of this in the beginning, that it's clear, it's structured, but it's not rigid. We can always move away from this structured agenda. It is a bottom-up thing. It's emergent and evolutionary, and it's quite flexible. So, as a summary, we can say, so it's about theory, reflection, and practice. This is a process and an experiment. It's a prototype. It changes continuously through feedback. It's a structured approach that provides a scaffolding, but it's non-prescriptive. So it's an open format. So it's easily transferable into real life and outside higher education. And it's right spot on with the UNESCO Education for Sustainable Development Goals. It is a research approach in which design students learn by selecting what they are passionate about and interested in, self-efficacy and leadership. And everyone knows how to do that, no matter how shy they are. They take on responsibility. There's a democratic thinking behind it and acting as well. It's about reflective practice. It's about developing social skills, about intrinsic motivation, about a higher engagement and deeper learning experience, and connecting design theory with design practice. The culture and mindset. So giving up the lecture format 10 years ago for me was instigated by cybernetics, by Bela Barnati's conversation methodology, which we used at cybernetics conferences. You can just Google this and you'll find a paper about it. Research from the neurosciences and my own experience in supervising PhD students. So the students are taken as grown-up actors with their own desires and needs. My role has to become more that of a generous listener, trying to understand, giving advice, and providing theoretical input. In the end, I could say I'm trying to make myself obsolete and just be the expert for design theory. And here we have the people that inspired me. That was Carl Rogers with his authenticity, Neil Postman teaching on an eye level, feedback and critique, Paulo Freire, the listening is so important, the humanization of education, critical consciousness, and then, of course, the systems and cybernetics, going from creativity and circularity to circular causality and so on, and making this explicit with the students. So in the beginning, this was a process. In the beginning, I didn't have an agenda and there was no structure. we began with nothing, and there were always 5 students who got it and ran and took over, and 20 students who were kind of overwhelmed by all the freedom of my seminar, which I hoped would become our seminar. Today, we understand that some experience this freedom of the original format as unsatisfying due to its missing clarity of structure and orientation to which students were accustomed to from 12 years of schooling. For me, this was a sobering insight, as I had trusted that structure would emerge as a self-organizing phenomenon, as it does with the PGR students, yeah? Once the format, the goals, and the purpose were communicated with clarity. A structured framework appears necessary for creativity, spontaneity, and flexibility to unfold. Where everything is possible, it seems hard for something to become actual. That was my deep insight. After Mathilde joined, okay, that's a repetition. So thank you for your attention. These are some of the papers we published about our approach, and now I'm stopping the presentation and I'm checking how long I took. Okay.
You were perfect, Michael. That's absolutely spot on. That was 30 minutes. So we've got a good 20, 30 minutes of discussion. Okay. I think it would be good to ask some questions and maybe have some discussion. That was really, really interesting. Thank you so much for that. Do you want to stop sharing the screen just now? Would that be okay?
Oh, I thought I had stopped already. Okay, here we go.
No, that's it. Perfect. Wonderful. Excellent. So yeah, thank you very much once again. I mean, I've heard it before, Michael, but I don't think I must have listened properly the last time, because there was a lot more detail. And also I wonder if your thinking on this has matured actually in some ways. But yeah, I'm not going to jump in and ask my question first.
Yeah.
Well, my 6 questions. I'll let somebody else have a go first.
So it's not very much about systems. Oh, thanks.
Well, I was going to say I'm a closet cybernetician. I've never actually told anybody that, so
okay.
I guess revealing that in public space is probably not the best.
I think there are many among us. They just don't know it yet.
Exactly. Yeah. Tell me about it. I know. Anyway, let's not go there. Does anybody want to have a go first? Okay, in the awkward pause, I will slip in a quick question then round about structures and the idea of structures. And I think, as I say, Michael, this might be one of the biggest things that perhaps has changed in your thinking. You could actually see it emerging during the presentation. So you started off by talking about how you're trying to destructure, from traditional one-to-many or hierarchical structures. And that, it's the notion that the studio has no front, if you like. That's Shulman's phrase. But of course, there are structures in it. There are all, even particularly when you try to destructure something, it's almost like humans abhor a structural vacuum. They almost look for those kind of points and nodes. So I was going to ask about how you destructure these sorts of things, but I think you talked about it much later on in terms of how that structure emerges. So I guess the question would be, what sorts of structures do you see emerging? And not just the normal ones, not just the organizational structures or the facilitation structures, but do you see other structures, social, political, learning, interpersonal? I mean, do you know much about what else is happening in those sorts of structures and spaces?
I think what's most important is the reflective part, so that we jump from being in the moment to saying, stop. What did just happen? And move up on a meta level and reflect on what just happened. And this reflective practice is something that should become customary. And I also have to remind me of that all the time, that you should take the time to reflect on this, what has just been going on. And this is, I think, one of the most important structural insights that people can take from our contained theory seminar out into the studio practice and out into their shared accommodation, where they have a problem with some people not leaving the kitchen tidy behind, and suddenly all of this becomes a kind of transferable knowledge and a part of a life practice, the reflective part.
That is such a systems thinker's answer. There are no structures. There is just a feedback loop. That's fantastic, Michael. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Okay, Brendan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Derek. And thank you very much, Michael. Really interesting to hear and see what you've been working with and how you packaged it for us and presented it. It was very intriguing to see in the end also this idea of, that there was I don't know if I fully understood that you'd sort of come to see that there was a certain amount, I forget if you said 5 that are really getting it and 20 that are not, or I really appreciate this idea of the sort of pains of moving from a more structured environment and way of teaching and even space to something that's very open. And you talked about needing structure, but I did get curious about the types of challenges that would arise and how, I've often think of the resistances toward this openness and the resistances to talk to a lot in the past about like maybe admitting that you're learning but complaining that you haven't been taught, and these things that we're conditioned, or the students that we're working with are conditioned to believe. And then how you, once they are reflecting on it, raising those challenges, maybe being a little bit disenfranchised from this type of event. How do you work with that? Is it the facilitation? What is the part that you're then doing in these moments within this course or this type of course to not sort of lose, to not lose the student or what it might be?
Yeah. So here it depends on. It's something that you have to learn early, and depending on the student's experience and age group, you have to treat them, that's what I just learned, totally different. So with the research students, you can be much more open. You can allow for an unstructured. You can allow for moments of boredom. Yeah, that was Ranel's method. Yeah, he was telling for 2 hours anecdotes from his life, and when students were bored out of their mind, then he suddenly initiated something. Yeah, and everyone was totally overwhelmed at this moment. But all these students were mature. With my students, so I realized when I got the students in higher up semesters, like in masters or higher bachelors, they hated theory because the lecturers we hired from from Berlin usually did Derrida or Virilio with them, yeah. And that or Donna Haraway. And for first year bachelor students, that's too tough, yeah. And so I realized that in order to have students that understand and embrace this approach and enjoy taking on responsibility for the group and their own learning, I have to start with first year students. And so I kind of gave up teaching the masters more and switched to first year bachelor students. And when they come through the door, they are coming straight from school. They have learned to just lean back and be lectured and get homework, and they want grades. They're thinking all about grades. And so the first weeks and months, it's actually all about telling them that I'm not going to entertain them. Nothing will happen here if they don't initiate it and do it. Yeah. And I'm here to facilitate and give theoretical input. And then there are always 5 students that get it. And with those students, I start facilitating after about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks. In the beginning, when we started this, it took students 2 months to get it. Now it's kind of a lived culture in the building, on the campus, more or less. And they get it in an afternoon. And so this has been a big progress. So you don't, because it's something that's lived in the student room, and partly, for example, we're also doing check-ins. some of my colleagues are doing check-ins as well, and so they feel quite at home there. I hope this answered your question.
It's very nice. Thank you to hear about this more way you deal with it from the very beginning and more in the culture that you're cultivating within the entire education,
Yes.
rather than something that's bringing into a single course. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's actually really quite an important point to draw out a wee bit further as well. If you don't mind me interrupting us, it's the difference between, if you like, the prior educational level. It's almost like the preparedness, if you like, of students.
Yeah.
Everything you've described there, Michael, particularly in the solution that you can reduce it from months down to an afternoon, suggests that this is everything to do with dispositions, attitudes, behaviors, and almost unlearning, if you like, in that first moment, or trusting the process enough to allow the unlearning to unravel. How do you describe that as a learning outcome in some ways, or how do you okay, I mean, I know you can describe it as a learning outcome. Don't look at me like that, Laura. But you know what I mean. I mean, how do you state this in some sense, or how do you get others to take it seriously? And I don't just mean for your institution, Michael. It's like if you were to go to another faculty, another institution, how would you teach this to someone else almost as a thing? How can you convey that lesson to other educators? Or is that, I'm asking too much now? Is it, am I wanting too much?
Maybe reading our papers is a good introduction to that, yeah? Possibly, but of course it's only the tip of the iceberg. It's what we do and how we do it. For example, in the very first meeting we have, we discuss and write upon, we discuss what are your expectations here? How do you think you're going to learn how to become a designer? And they have no conceptualization of that. And do you think, what's the difference between how you learn at school and how you will study design? These questions. So I split them up in small groups. They are discussing this, then they're writing it on Post-its, and we are posting them on the wall. And we go through this and discuss it. And they realize in this process that designing, no one can teach you how to design. You have to learn it yourself. It's a totally constructivist approach. You can only construct it yourself. And when this, and we talk about this, then I mentioned Donald Trön, yeah, for example, and we learn that actually there's this paradox in there. The first year students learn it, that they are expected to design before they can design. This is things we discuss, and that they write to their journals. And so, and then we discuss, so how do you feel when you're supposed to do something that you've never done before? You feel, as Donald Trön writes, you feel inept, you feel overwhelmed, you feel maybe frustrated, do you feel confused? Yeah. And so we discussed that probably in the first year of their design studies, they will experience a lot of this, yeah, of frustration and confusion, because they have to do something that they've never done before, and it will be graded, yeah, for example. And so I would say this meta level on reflecting on our expectations and what we know is a totally important thing. But this is all stuff that I learned from the interacting with PhD students. I hope this answers your question. And then down here, I see Alberto Iberbuden, who's doctoral research I'm supervising. And I think he could also say something about that. If he wants to. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Can you hear me, right? Yeah. Thank you very much, Michael, and for the presentation. I was kind of reflecting a lot, because maybe to give a bit of context to everybody, I was also a student from Michael when I did my master there, and then I became a PhD student. And now I'm actually teaching design theory and applying some of the things that I learned from Michael. And I think I had the chance to teach in a group of students that didn't have this class that Michael was showing, so the bachelor, and then students that did. And I think maybe what I want to add is that it's very clear and difficult to measure, but these skills that this type of learning develops in students, they stay with them, and it really has an impact later on, you know. And if we can actually take a movie, not a picture of their process, I can see how their capacity to look at what they are doing in that moment, or to reflect, or to articulate their own experience in the learning environment is significantly different from the master students that were part of the class and the ones that were not. But yeah, I think that's one point to share with all of you. And the second point, I think also very important to me from this talk, is that Michael, at some point in the presentation, he said that, you know, it is highly personalizable in a way. You know, you can adapt these ideas to your own particular environment. And this is something that I'm doing as well in my classes. Now I'm teaching as a teacher from the other side. I take the philosophy of that, but I kind of give my own twist to it. So I will, instead of going for a walk, I will maybe just sit down and observe the trains moving in the station and to ask them to try to draw the systems that they see, you know, or instead of just walking, I will make them take a picture and then discuss this picture and explain why they took this picture. Or, you know, I will adapt all those ideas. But I think the philosophy of the methodology of teaching, I think, is very important. And I think maybe the last thing that I wrote down from one of the questions before that I thought it was interesting is the resistance, and how students sometimes have these expectations that are very important to map and to understand and to make them think about. But how these very friendly teaching activities that are not directly, okay, we're going to read this book and we're going to do this and this is going to be the end, but these soft methods of approaches to bring learning closer to them, or what they are interested in learning, I think that's also a very good point. And I really like that question, how a method of teaching can reduce the resistance that students have, and how that in turn can promote a better learning experience. I don't know if that makes sense or if that helps, Michael, but those were my notes.
Thank you. Yes. And the really important is, don't forget, it's about theory. So we are reading texts. And in the end of this, so this year, my first semester students, they have to answer 6 questions, but it should be a kind of letter to the next cohort coming next October, to someone. So they're writing to a letter to a new student, what they should do, what they should expect from our theory seminar. So it's all about linking theory and practice and theory together.
That's nice. That's a lovely teach back model as well. Yeah, cool. Laura, or Central St. Martin's generally. This is a bit like Eurovision now, isn't it? It's a bit.
Oh dear, yeah, and the points from London, Central St. Martin's. No, I thank you for the presentation. Fascinating. I was noticing as you were talking that it seems to be very dependent on conversation and talking, and obviously reading and engaging with texts. And I wondered if you've witnessed any maybe barriers in that model for students who might be working in alternative languages, or having to come into these situations and have these types of conversations immediately in maybe when the language of the text might not be their first language, or the languages that they share with their peers as well. I wondered if you'd encountered anything with that.
Not really. So with the master students, we have our bachelor students are quite homogeneous. Yeah, they come from 200 miles around. They are mostly German or have a migrant background, but are fluent in German, so that's not much of a problem. Problematic is, so I try to take away the fear from complex texts, and we're reading really accessible, just a chapter in not too sophisticated. Yeah, but however, with the years going by, our texts and readings become more and more ambitious. Yeah. So, and with the master students and with the 6th semester students, we are reading state-of-the-art research papers from about metamodernism and soma aesthetics and so on. And so it's very important to keep the texts simple and accessible. For example, Wilkinson, the elevator story. I don't know if you know that one. You can just Google it, Wilkinson. So it's just 2 pages in simple English. So, and then that's also when English texts slowly start coming in. In the beginning, we're reading from German design theoretician, some papers, and then we progress to simple English texts.
Wonder if I could maybe just, sorry, Michael, on you go. Yep.
Yeah, all about design in the widest sense. Yeah. And also, of course, we are doing integrated design here, meaning our students don't become graphic designers or product designers or film or textiles. They have to do everything. That means they are engaging with a problem. It's this problem-based approach. And in the process, they identify a possible solution. So do I make a poster, or do I make a YouTube video, or do I design a product or an app or something? Yeah, and so they go more open into the process.
That was going to be my sort of extension to Laura's question there, Michael, in the sense that beyond language, which is arguably quite logocentric, there seemed to be quite an active component to what you were doing as well, the learn by doing stuff. So do you also see similar levels of maturity in literacy, if you like, design literacy or visual literacy as a component of design literacy that relates back to theory? Basically, what you're teaching in the course or what is being learned in the course applied in design. And do you see as many students as confidently communicating their designs as they might be the ideas or the dialogue or does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes. This is kind of a white spot. So sometimes when I talk to my colleagues, they have students that excel in their product design world or graphic design, editorial design, that I perceive as not very studious and not very involved. But also the other way around, yeah, that I have students that are very visible, that work really hard and make wonderful contributions to our seminar, theory-wise and through involvement and facilitation and so on, or taking on role, that have no idea if they are good designers or not. Yeah, so we need to close this loop. Yeah, that's clear to me. Yeah.
Interesting. So could I ask, when you said it's a white spot, could I ask, what does that mean? Is that a kind of blind spot?
It's a blind spot, yes. I mean,
okay.
It's a blind spot, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. So that's future work?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Brilliant. I think I saw Lucia's hand maybe go up, possibly. Nope. My apologies if I didn't. Does anybody else have any?
I think it was me.
Lewis, sorry.
Yeah, I think this just builds on what you just said, but I had a question on, have you reflected on sort of the perceived authority or legitimacy that you have as an instructor related to your ability to facilitate spaces like this? Because I, for example, teach a course on systems to second-year undergrads, but I'm a PhD researcher, and a few of the things that I do involve sort of breaking their normal pattern of learning, right? Like they're used to a very particular way of teaching. There is a sort of idolization of the studio instructor that has 20 years of experience working for the private sector, and sort of enters in conflict. And there are some students that get and want to engage and they're respectful of the space and all that, but there are others that find it really difficult to see how this is relevant for design. They have a really rigid idea of what design is and how it should be thought. And at times it's difficult to break if the authority, not authority is an unfair word, but like sort of my position as an instructor is seen as same as others, right? So I don't know if you've ever reflected on that.
I think so. Here we are a tightly knit community. So we only have, I think, something like 300 students in our school. On the campus, we have 1,700 students in the architecture department and so on. And we teachers know all our students, and all our students know the teachers, of course, yeah. So I guess most of my colleagues know their students by name. And often we're sharing the breaks together, and sometimes in the evenings we are cooking together and so on. Not with everyone, yeah. And so my role and the authority that comes with it is, I think, from the beginning, I'm kind of quite drawn in the background and always ask questions and listen to the students. And I'm not really calling the shots. Or let's say I'm calling the shots in the beginning, but step by step, from seminar to seminar, the students are posting the agenda and the updates on the intranet, and they're taking visible responsibility in organizing their own processes. Of course, this is time consuming because we are meeting a day before or 2 days before and take an hour to discuss in depth. So what are we doing next week? Have you got any ideas for a warm-up exercise in the beginning? And the teaching assistant and me, we are the ones who then can say, this takes 10 minutes to do, and this takes 5 minutes to do. But this is it. So I would say, when I'm the expert for design theory, and I'm quite knowledgeable there in research methods and so on, and connecting their ideas to texts, but at the same time, this is the shared responsibility of running the seminar. I hope that answered your question, Luis.
We can chat more about it.
Okay. Yes, yeah.
Well, I wonder if I could once again be a bit of a ass and kind of just extend Lewis's question a little bit, because it's one of the things, like in studio, it's kind of like the no structures thing, Michael. It's that, and Orange Shreve write about this really well, it's that tension between you've coached this individual all the way through, you've helped them develop, helped them learn, and then you have to turn around and give them a mark. It's like this horrible twisted tension, and there's always a power asymmetry. There is always that horrible payoff at the end. I mean, is that something that you do reflect on? And it's a difficult thing to reflect on because you can't remove yourself.
We reflect on this together. So at the end, the final text that they write, so we have got these 6 questions. What did I learn about theory and practice and so on? And the last question is, which grade would you give yourself and why? Please elaborate. And they are stricter than we are. Really. So they are very good at judging their own participation and studiousness. And once in a while, you get a really deep insight into people, where people that are outstanding, they perceive themselves as below average. And then there are people who are below average, who perceive themselves in this grading as outstanding. And I always write a short text, what they're really good at, of course, giving feedback. How we see, or I see, how they developed over the semester, from being shy to being able to timekeeping, and then giving feedback, and then facilitation. And then I usually say, okay, I agree with your idea of how you grade yourself. Or I would say you're too harsh and I'm grading you much better. Or the people that overestimate their performance, where I can say some friendly but sobering clarifications, yeah, and so it's always also about feed forward. You are strong here. You could get stronger here, and you could do this and this and this in order to get better from our perspective.
Yeah, nice. I wonder if you could close the Paulo Freire loop there and feed back to your student what you learned from them. That could be quite nice as well. Thank you very much for that, Michael. I know we're at time just now. I'm going to just close the discussion just now. I don't mind hanging on if people wanted to swear and have a bit of a sort of more private staff room discussion. That's absolutely fine. But I'm going to end the recording just now and just thank you very much for that, Michael. It was really interesting. It's a very interesting approach and disposition towards pedagogy as well. And it's nice to see something like this. It's not very often you see something like this realised as fully as it has been, and with enough kind of reflective components round about it to give us some interesting and quite honest insights. So thank you so much for that. As I say, next session is going to be in January. It's actually a couple of weeks later. It's not the normal sort of second week in January. We'll send round the dates to everybody. If you follow us on Eventbrite, that's probably the best way to keep up to date. We still haven't sorted out our mailing lists and stuff like that, so my apologies. And that'll be Leila Garib. She's going to be presenting the work from her PhD thesis. So thank you very much, Michael, and I'll end the recording just now, and see you all next year.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you all for coming.